The story begins with a Min-hyuk dreaming about a mysterious girl who saved the bus he was in a few years ago using only one arm. Unfortunately, he wakes up unable to see her face because he receives the same threatening phone call every night. Someone wants Aimsoft to discontinue a video game, but Min-hyuk doesn't care because he's already used to these calls. What bothers him most is not knowing who the mysterious girl is, but their paths will cross soon. That mysterious girl is Do Bong-soon, a petite girl who inherited great strength from her maternal ancestors. For thousands of years, this strength has been passed down from generation to generation. This power is to do good things, but if the girl who inherits it does something wrong, the girl will lose her strength and get blisters on her face, as happened to Bong-soon's mother, who was a weightlifter and used her supernatural strength to make money beating guys. One day, Min-hyuk senses someone is watching him and runs after a guy, but soon loses sight of him, so he calls his assistant, Mr. Gong, and orders him to get him a bodyguard. Meanwhile, Bong-soon goes out on errands for her father and runs into a children's bus driver being beaten by gang members. If there's one thing she can't stand, it's injustice. She decides to call the police, but is stopped by Gwangbok, who takes her phone and smashes it. This angers Bong-soon so much that she begins attacking the gang members one by one with superhero-like punches, earning the applause and cheers of the children on the bus. Min-hyuk sees all of this and calls the police and an ambulance because Bong-soon's strength is such that all the gang members have several broken bones, and in Gwangbok's case, his jaw and teeth are shattered. Later, everyone is taken to the police station, and a friend of Bong-soon's takes their statements. He is Guk-do, a law-abiding police officer. He can't believe the children's testimony because, according to them, the petite and cute Bong-soon was able to break the bones of 7 gang members at once. At that moment, Min-hyuk enters the testimony room and says he was the main witness, saying the children are kindergartners and recently watched a superhero movie, which is why they made up that story. Regarding the gang members, he states that he saw them fighting each other, which earns them outrage, but they are soon silenced with a threatening glare from Bong-soon. Then, Guk-do's boss says that the case must be closed because Min-hyuk's testimony is the most credible of all, and Bong-soon breathes a sigh of relief and looks lovingly at her friend Guk-do. But before leaving the station, she scolds Min-hyuk for lying to the police. Afterward, she goes to her family's nut bakery and is scolded by her mother for being an unemployed young woman. She urges her to keep looking for work, and Bong-soon sighs sadly because what she wants most is to create a video game inspired by her, in which she can freely use her powers. Elsewhere, at the hospital, Bong-soon's twin, Bonki, looks at the x-rays of the gang members' broken bones and quickly realizes it's his sister. He can't help but remember when they were kidnapped and Bong-soon took it upon herself to save them both using her super strength. The next morning, Bong-soon wakes up worried and quickly checks her face for blisters, but there are none, nor has she lost any strength. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk asks Mr. Gong to find out Bong-soon's cell phone number. He wants her to be her bodyguard, so Mr. Gong goes to the police station and asks for Bong-soon, but Guk-do flatly refuses to give it to him because that would violate the witness privacy law, and he always follows the law. He even once disguised himself as a woman to catch a corrupt congressman, but the congressman had dealings with the local police, and Guk-do was demoted to junior detective. Later, Min-hyuk himself goes to the police station and speaks with the police officer who takes bribes from his father and asks for information about Bong-soon, which he gladly gives. In the afternoon, Mr. Gong calls Bong-soon to interview her. The next day, Bong-soon and Mr. Gong meet, and he offers her a big salary to be Min-hyuk's bodyguard. She only accepts because Min-hyuk is the CEO of Aimsoft, the company that creates the coolest video games in South Korea. Meanwhile, Bong-soon's mother, Mrs. Jinni, gossips with her friends at the bakery about the neighborhood's urbanization. They were previously opposed to it, but now they realize there are stalkers around, and it scares them. At that moment, Mrs. Jung enters the bakery and tells Bong-soon's father, Mr. Do, that her son Guk-do and Bong-soon ran into each other at the police station yesterday. This infuriates Mrs. Jinni because she believes her daughter hit someone and that's why she ended up in the police station. She runs home and severely scolds Bong-soon, but she assures her mom that what she did was for the sake of justice and happily tells her that she got a job. The next day, Bong-soon goes to Aimsoft and dreams of working as a video game developer one day. So when she runs into Min-hyuk, she asks him for a chance, and he condescendingly tells her that he will give it to her if she does a good job protecting him, since the threat and extortion against him are increasing every day. Before giving her the contract, Min Hyuk challenges her to beat him in arm wrestling, and she rolls her eyes and agrees, saying he can use both hands. And his pride is hurt when she easily defeats him. Afterward, Mr. Gong brings the contract, and she happily signs it. However, her smile fades when Min Hyuk asks Mr. Gong to face Bong Soon in a chicken fight, and she agrees if he wears a helmet. Although Bong Soon tries to be gentle, she ends up throwing him against the wall, and Mr. Gong is taken to the hospital. That night, Gukdu stops by Bong Soon's house to drop off a self-defense zapper because he's worried about rumors of stalkers in the neighborhood, and to her sadness, he leaves quickly because he has a date with his girlfriend. That night, a girl is murdered in the alleys of the neighborhood, and Gukdu's team is in charge of the investigation. The next day, Bong Soon goes to work and is surprised to learn that Min Hyuk even receives digital threats, and he says that they should view the hunting down as a game. If they manage to catch the culprit, he will reward her. The murder investigation begins with team leader Yuk having his team watch a classic crime series, as murderers are always inspired by fiction, which angers Gukdu. Meanwhile, Bong Soon begins her job as a bodyguard by testing Min Hyuk's car to make sure it doesn't have a bomb. She then accompanies him around the city, buying a lot of clothes and sunglasses, holding hands so as not to arouse suspicion. When he shows her how cool his drone is, they realize they're being watched by someone. Min Hyuk chases the guy with the drone and manages to take a picture of the motorcycle's license plate. Finally, Min Hyuk says they're done for the day and takes her to her neighborhood. Since he's hungry, she recommends her family's bakery without telling him that her father owns it. Then her mother stares at her in shock. She's always wanted a rich, handsome, and eccentric son-in-law, and it seems Bong Soon has found herself a boyfriend with those qualities. That night, Bong Soon's best friend comes to visit. She is Kyung Shim, and she's treated like family. Before dinner, Bong Soon tells her about her new job and her eccentric boss. Kyung Shim asks if he's gay, and she says that according to him, he hired a female bodyguard because otherwise the media would say he's dating his male bodyguard. After that, they go to dinner, and Mrs. Jinhee advises her daughter to marry her boss, but she says Min Hyuk is interested in men. That shocks her, but she doesn't care. She wants Min Hyuk for her daughter. Meanwhile, Gukdu passes by the crime scene and looks at it closely, unaware that he's being watched. Later, a girl is attacked at the same crime scene as before, but fortunately, a witness named Jang Hyun prevented her from being murdered. Gukdu can't believe something like this had happened minutes before he was there, so Detective Nyukboy decides to ask the city to install CCTV cameras throughout the neighborhood. Then they disperse the curious onlookers who approached the scene, including Bong Soon and Kyung Shim. They return home and met with some troublemaking students, stealing money from another classmate. This angers Bong Soon, so she intervenes, ripping their sneakers and giving the bully boy her number so he can call her if they bother him again. The next day, the detective team receives the autopsy of the first victim and concludes that the attacker is different because the first one used a knife while the new one only punched the second victim. Then, Gukdu is assigned to watch her at the hospital. While he's watching her, he realizes that the suspect injured her to make her faint. Another person that it is at the hospital is Bong Soon. She stopped by to visit Mr. Gong, who has a fractured tailbone and will take a while to recover, so she offers him some Feces wine made by her grandmother. This wine heals fractures in no time, but Mr. Gong thinks she's making fun of him and kicks her out. Before leaving, Bong Soon sees Gukdu and goes over to say hello, which causes him to get distracted and fail to notice a fake doctor coming in to inject the victim with something. Gukdu then asks Bong Soon to guard the victim's room door while he goes to the bathroom. Suddenly, the victim begins to convulse, and the fake doctor takes her away, claiming she needs surgery. When Gukdu returns, he realizes the culprit has taken the victim and runs to find him, almost grabbing him, but the culprit was more skillful than he was and takes the victim to a basement with many cells. Bong Soon feels guilty about what happened and tells Gukdu that she could recognize the culprit's voice anywhere. So, he says he'll provide security because she's now a valuable witness. The next day, Bong Soon goes to work and tells Min Hyuk what happened. He says the case is very interesting, and the police are fools because they think there are two culprits when it's obvious there's only one. Suddenly, Bong Soon receives a call from Gukdu telling her that her bodyguard is about to arrive, and Min Hyuk accuses her of liking Gukdu and smiles amusedly, saying that Gukdu is handsome. At that moment, Bong Soon's bodyguard arrives and refuses to leave her side. Even though Min Hyuk tells him that she doesn't need protection, She's stronger than both of them combined. Starting today, Bong-soon will be followed by her bodyguard, and Bong-soon will follow Min-hyuk, so the three of them go to a gaming conference. Meanwhile, the kidnapper puts on a mask and dresses his new victim as a bride. He takes a photo, saying that she is his first girlfriend. Meanwhile, at the gaming conference, Bong-soon spots a suspicious guy and follows him while Min-hyuk and her bodyguard go to the bathroom. When she returns, she sees Min-hyuk alone and asks him about her bodyguard. When they realize he's taking too long, he rushes in and discovers the bodyguard has been stabbed. Fortunately, the wound isn't deep and only needs a few stitches. Alone, Bong-soon asks her boss if he suspects anyone, and he says he has many enemies. Even his own family is his enemy. He has several half-siblings, and they don't like him, and he only gets along with one. Elsewhere, Gukdu is informed of what happened, and it ruins the date he was having with his girlfriend Heeji to commemorate their anniversary. At the end of the day, Min-hyuk asks Bong-soon to sleep at his house tonight because, according to him, he might be attacked at night. He says she might make Gukdu jealous if they sleep together. Bong-soon agrees on the condition that she gets a raise, and when she receives a worried call from Gukdu, she tells him where she is. A short time later, Gukdu arrives at Min-hyuk's house and gets angry because a single woman cannot sleep in a man's house. It is improper and takes her hand to take her out, but Min-hyuk stops him saying that he wants to spend the night with her. Gukdu flatly refuses, saying he's violating the labor law by forcing Bong-soon to work at night. Although Bong-soon says they have to work on something secret, Gukdu isn't convinced. Frustrated by the situation, he calls Bong-soon's mother to inform her of the situation. But instead of getting angry, Mrs. Jinny gives her permission for her daughter to stay and asks to speak with her. Alone, Jinny advises her daughter to do whatever she must to catch Min-hyuk, surprising her husband and Bonki, who were listening. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk flirts with Gukdu, but Gukdu doesn't notice, so Min-hyuk tells Bong-soon that he will waiting for her in his room, injuring Gukdu. So Gukdu gives Bong-soon a tracking bracelet. If she presses the blue button, any police officer will come to help her and asks her to be careful because all men are dirty dogs. Then, Bong-soon goes to his boss's room and discovers that the closet leads to a secret basement where there is a computer area for research and an area with a lot of video games. Min-hyuk tells her that he already got the address of the guy who was watching them and they will go after him tomorrow. Then, they go to bed, and he tells her that he created this basement because before she died, his mother left him at his father's house and his half-siblings locked him in the closet. But he soon discovered that this was a good thing because he could sleep as long as he wanted. Although that made their dad give them a hard time, he was good with his fists. He used to be a mobster who had dealings with the police, which is why he doesn't like them. Then Bong-soon can't help but smile thinking about Gukdu. He asks how long she's had a one-sided crush on him, and she says since middle school. He's the only one who makes her feel weak, and that makes her sad. Min-hyuk doesn't like seeing her sad, so he distracts her by challenging her to play virtual reality games, and they have a good time. The next day, Bong-soon wakes up to find Min-hyuk sleeping next to her. She throws him off the couch and goes to make breakfast. He complains about having too many carbs, and she says his future wife is going to have a lot of problems with how tantrum-throwing he is. Then she realizes he won't have a wife, and he counters by saying how much he likes Gukdu. Then they go to the motorcycle owner's apartment and Bong-soon interrogates him, but accidentally hits him, causing him to faint. So they take him to the roof to interrogate him for real. He confesses that his motorcycle was stolen, and Bong-soon laments that she hit an innocent man. Elsewhere, Gukdu and his team interrogate the kidnapped girl's fiancé, and he says they were about to get married. At that moment, Min-hyuk and Bong-soon arrive to testify about the stabbing of Bong-soon's bodyguard. They tell Gukdu about the threats Min-hyuk is receiving and his refusal to get help from the police. This angers Gukdu. He doesn't understand why Min-hyuk doesn't hire a bodyguard. When Min-hyuk tries to say that he already has one, Bong-soon stomps on his foot to shut him up. Afterward, they leave the police station, and Min-hyuk says his foot hurts, so they go to the hospital and discover that Bong-soon cracked his foot. Taking advantage of the fact that they are at the hospital, they stop by Mr. Gong. While she is waiting outside his room, the gang members see Bong-soon and become so scared that they start shaking. Meanwhile, Gukdu takes his girlfriend to the hospital, and she is treated by Bonki, Boom-soon's twin. He treats her with so much care that Heeji falls in love with him instantly. While his girlfriend is being treated, Gukdu takes the opportunity to scold Bongsoon because he learned that she is accompanying her boss to the hospital. This is clearly a violation of employee rights. To Bongsoon's anger, Gukdu acts like a jealous and protective boyfriend and complains that he does this even though he has a girlfriend already, but Gukdu doesn't understand what she means. Angry with the men, Bongsoon goes home to shower and change her clothes and thinks about what her brother told her. Her powers have been out of control lately. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the gang leader, Ba Tak, visits his subordinates to scold them for losing to a woman and orders them to find her and recruit her as a gang member. Later, Bongsoon is on her way to the hospital to pick up her boss when she runs into the youth gang. This time, their leader has come to test how strong she is and starts mocking Bongsoon. She teaches them a lesson by making them ride the merry-go-round in the playground and orders them to clean up the place or else they'll have to deal with her. They obey because they now respect her as a leader. Then she goes to the hospital to pick up her boss. As he leaves Mr. Gong's room, Mr. Tak leaves as well and is seen by Minhyuk. They both recognize each other, thinking about how small the world is. Then, Minhyuk asks Bongsoon to take him to the place indicated by the GPS, which is his family's mansion. Tonight, they will have dinner with his family, and Minhyuk asks Bongsoon to pay attention to each member. One of them could be the one threatening him. Dinner starts off quietly until Mr. N announces he wants Minhyuk to be his official heir. He's the only one capable of transforming his construction company into a conglomerate, and Minhyuk says he'll merge the two companies. This announcement angers Minhyuk's older brother, Dongga, and younger brother, Kyungwon. But Minhyuk's second oldest brother, Dongsuk, is happy for him and encourages him to do well. Angered by his children's reaction, Mr. N flies into a rage and threatens to beat them all up. After dinner, Bongsoon says the most likely villain is Mr. An, and Minhyuk complains that it doesn't make sense. Later, he drops her off at her neighborhood and Bongsoon's mother sees this, and she scolds her daughter for dressing so conservatively. If she wants to catch her boss, she should wear more daring clothes, which exasperates Bongsoon. After that, while Bongsoon's family is having dinner, Bonki receives a call from Gukdu's girlfriend. She is very grateful for his tender care of her and wants to have lunch with him, and he accepts, which doesn't sit well with the family since that girl has a boyfriend. Later, Bongsoon goes to buy beer and hear a woman scream. At that moment, another girl was being attacked by the kidnapper, and he takes her to a junkyard. That same night, while Bongsoon is drawing a video game character based on her, Gukdu calls her to make sure she won't spend another night with his boss and scolds her for not taking care of her reputation. She is a single woman of marriageable age, and other men might take advantage of that. Bongsoon is angered by his audacity and for the first time yells at him that treating her like that only makes her heart hurt and cuts him off. Minhyuk then calls Bongsoon to ask if she's a man or if she can break rocks with her head, which angers her immensely. She realizes that not only is her strength out of control, but her emotions as well. The next day, the Gukdu investigation team considers the possibility that the kidnapper may have attacked other victims and they don't know because those women live alone. Meanwhile, Mrs. Jinhee and her friends continue arguing about what position to take on the neighborhood's development, so they go to consult a shaman who gives them nonsensical advice. Jinhee then asks about the possibility of her daughter and her boss sleeping together, causing her friends to giggle, and the shaman says they're very compatible, but if they get married, it will be a marriage full of punches. So, the shaman scolds her for wanting to marrying her daughter with that man, but Jinhee knows it will be her daughter who will do the punches, and she laments even more that Minhyuk is only interested in men. On the other hand, Bongsoon goes to her boss's house, and he orders her to cook for him because he can't move his foot because of her, which is a lie, but she must obey him. After cooking him a feast, Bongsoon goes outside to rant at him in private, but she does it in the car, unaware that it's bugged, so Minhyuk hears her and punishes her by making her jog behind him while he uses his hoverboard. A while later, Bongsoon throws herself to the ground, saying she can't take it anymore. Suddenly, a sniper attacks them, and Minhyuk doesn't hesitate to hide Bongsoon with his body, and the sniper hits him in the arm with air bullets. Bongsoon can't believe what's happening, and like Fran Farmer fashion from The Bodyguard, she picks up her prodigy and carelessly throws him into the car, causing him to hit his head. He then asks what is the secret of her strength and concludes that she's an alien. She apologizes for causing him so much discomfort and promises to take him to the hospital, but he refuses and asks her to drop him off at his house, which makes her sad. Afterward, she goes to her family's bakery and her father sees her so sad that he gives her hidden money and asks her to buy whatever clothes she wants. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk keeps staring at the painting of his mysterious girl, which he has hidden in his closet. He still wonders who she is and begins to suspect her identity. Meanwhile, Gukdu's girlfriend and Bonki meet alone at a restaurant, which surprises him. He thought he would have lunch with the couple, but they have a good time talking about their high school days. Later, Bong-soon uses the money his father gave her to buy some nice clothes, but her shopping is interrupted when the youth gang members call her. They want to be her subjects. To them, she is a hero because of her great strength, which is demonstrated when a ball hits her legs and she decides to kick it into the stratosphere. This inspires even more admiration among the high school students, and she reminisces about her own time in school. At that time, she could barely control her strength and caused a lot of trouble, such as destroying tourist attractions and damaging the schoolyard bars, and all of this got worse when she found out Gukdu liked girls he could protect. Once, her mother took her to the Buddha temple to pray for her children to get into college, but Bong-soon asked to be Gukdu's girlfriend. Months later, Bong-soon and her mother returned to the Buddha temple. Mrs. Jinyi expressed her gratitude for Bonki getting into medical school and prayed for Bong-soon again. But Bong-soon didn't pray this time, instead turning over the Buddha statue for not fulfilling her request. At night, Gukdu passes by Bong-soon's house and makes her listen to part of the interrogation of the kidnapped girl's fiancé. She doesn't recognize his voice, therefore, he is not the fake doctor who took her that day. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk calls his favorite brother, Dong-suk, and tells him about the threats he's receiving. They're increasingly violent, demanding that he renounce his role as his father's heir. This surprises Dong-suk, and he promises to help, and Min-hyuk asks him to tell his other two brothers that he's no longer a little boy that they can lock in a closet. He already knows how to defend himself. After that, he calls Bong-soon and invites himself to her, Bonki, and Kyung-shim's outing. The four of them go to the movies first, followed by Mr. Tak and Agari, who want to recruit Bong-soon and had previously visited her family's bakery. They watch Bong-soon closely and are surprised to see her crying during the superheroes movie. They then follow them to a club and are surprised to recognize Min-hyuk as well. Inside the club, Bong-soon goes wild and drinks like there's no tomorrow. She climbs onto one of the floors to dance shamelessly. Then, she accidentally knocks out one of the dance poles and almost hits everyone, completely captivating Min-hyuk. He can't believe such a petite and pretty girl can be so strong and daring. Meanwhile, the police discover that another girl has been kidnapped, and one of the forensic experts discovers that one of the prints from the crime scene matches an exclusive designer shoe. In the other hand, in the basement of the junkyard, the kidnapper locks his new victim in a cell and calls her his second girlfriend. The next morning, Bong-soon wakes up feeling sick, and her mother scolds her, telling her how disrespectful she was to her boss last night. It turns out Min-hyuk brought her home last night, and she threatened to rip off parts of his body if he didn't stop liking Gukdu and threatened to quit her job. So, Bong-soon dresses up to beg her boss's forgiveness, but that's not necessary. He was completely mesmerized by her last night and tells her she can be late today. So Bong-soon stops by the pharmacy to buy a hangover cure, and as she was crossing the street, she bumps into a guy who apologizes and walks away, and she freezes. That's the voice of the guy who kidnapped the girl from the hospital. Unfortunately, she quickly loses sight of him but manages to conclude that the kidnapper is from the neighborhood. And not only that, he smelled like fuel and rust. After that, she arrives at the company where she is surprised by the news that Mr. Gong is returning today. So now she has a desk in Min-hyuk's office, which looks like a dollhouse. To her dismay, development meetings for a new game are taking place at the office, and she wants to participate, but Min-hyuk said he would only give her the opportunity if they caught his extortioner. Suddenly, she receives a call from her mother. She is furious because a video of her drunk and crying because she is strong went viral on social media. Bong-soon can't handle the embarrassment and hides under her desk, which Min-hyuk finds cute. Then Mr. Gong arrives. He's still in pain and complains about how strong Bong-soon is. He tells Min-hyuk that he met the gang members who attacked her, and everyone concluded that she's an alien, which makes Bong-soon even sadder. When Mr. Gong sees her coming out from under the desk, he fears for his life because he thinks she's going to beat him up, but she just takes him to his office to catch up. Alone, Min-hyuk calls his online contacts and asks them to get rid of Bong-soon's viral video. He then calls Gukdu and asks him to put Bong-soon under witness protection because she heard the kidnapper in the neighborhood today. surprising Gukdu since she didn't tell him about it. On the other hand, Bong-soon updates Mr. Gong on Min-hyuk's whereabouts these days. Long story short, his boss barely works, and the only thing worth mentioning is an awkward family dinner. She is then called into Min-hyuk's office because he's gotten used to having her by his side. Later, he watches her sleep, remembering how cute she sounded drunk, but is interrupted by Gukdu, who wakes her up, scolding her for not immediately telling him about hearing the kidnapper in the neighborhood. He says that from now on, he'll take her home every day but Min-hyuk objects. He wants to take her home. They sound like little kids fighting over a toy, so Bong-soon intervenes, saying that it makes her nervous that two men are fighting over her. Embarrassed, Min-hyuk and Gukdu ask the other to take her home. After that, Min-hyuk takes Bong-soon home and stops by the family bakery where her mother treats him like a son-in-law. Meanwhile, Gukdu and Detective Nukboy track down the missing car of the new victim. She's a ballet teacher who vanished without a trace, along with her car. They then go to the place where the car was last seen, near a junkyard. They are helped by a worker who tells them he never saw that car. Meanwhile, Gukdu's girlfriend goes to the hospital to visit Bonki, who's busy treating the gang members his sister attacked. But when he hears that Gwangbok wants revenge on her, he bandages his face, lying that he still has a long way to go. After that, he leaves the room and runs into Heejee, who insists on going on another date with him, and he accepts. Meanwhile, Bong-soon checks social media for her viral video and realizes it's been removed from everywhere. She wonders who caused this miracle, and Kyungshim says it was probably her boss and assures her that he doesn't like men and is just playing with her. Then, Kyungshim suggests cooking pork and tofu stew. Bong-soon happily accepts, so Kyungshim goes out to buy some. But as time goes by, Bong-soon worries that she hasn't returned and goes looking for her. Meanwhile, Kyungshim is brutally attacked by the kidnapper, but fortunately, Bong-soon quickly finds her and gets him off, severely injuring him, and he flees as best he can. Fortunately, Kyungshim only has broken ribs and a few scratches on her face, so she just needs to rest. That night, the neighborhood mothers gather at the bakery to split into groups of 3 and protect the neighborhood from the kidnapper. But suddenly, Mr. Tak and his men arrive. They say that in exchange for their support for the neighborhood's urbanization, his 60 men will protect the neighborhood, although they are scarier than the kidnapper himself. The next day, it's White Day, and Min-hyuk goes to buy chocolates for Bong-soon. She doesn't go to work because she's taking care of her friend, and that makes him feel lonely. So he calls Mr. Gong to keep him company and gives his the chocolates. Elsewhere, Gukdu goes to take Kyungshim's statement and is surprised when she tells him that Bong-soon saved her, and Kyungshim lies that Bong-soon's loud screams scared the kidnapper. Kyungshim then declares that the kidnapper didn't have a face. He wore a rubber mask. Outside, Gukdu severely scolds Bong-soon for not wearing the bracelet he gave her and orders her to hide in her boss's house, even though it bothers him greatly. After that, Gukdu goes to talk to Min-hyuk and asks him to let Bong-soon stay at his house because the kidnapper already knows her very well and he fears for her safety. Min-hyuk looks at him suspiciously. It seems Bong-soon's crush isn't one-sided. The next day, Gukdu stops by Bong-soon to take her to work and scolds her for looking pretty, unaware that she put on makeup and dressed nicely for him. For the rest of the day, Bong-soon feels really happy because, according to Gukdu, she is pretty. Meanwhile, Bong-soon's mother packs her daughter's suitcase and pack lingerie. At night, Min-hyuk takes Bong-soon home, and they both blush when they see the lingerie Mrs. Jin-hee packed for her daughter. Hours later, Bong-soon can't sleep and goes to the place where Kyungshin was attacked. She's followed by Min-hyuk, who thought she was sleepwalking, and she says she's very angry about what happened and vows to find the kidnapper. They return home, and soon Gukdu arrives, saying he'll live with them, as he can't bear the thought of Bong-soon being in danger. At first, Min-hyuk doesn't want Gukdu to stay, but he's very stubborn and doesn't even let Bong-soon convince him when she reveals that Min-hyuk likes men. So Min-hyuk agrees, but when he asks for a room, the 3 of them imagine embarrassing scenarios and decide not to sleep, so Min-hyuk suggests going to a bar. First, Min-hyuk destroys Gukdu at pool, and then Gukdu destroys Min-hyuk at darts. So they decide to have a tiebreaker in a drinking competition, which frustrates Bong-soon because they end up very drunk. Completely enraged, she carries them both out of the bar and leaves them there because she wants to buy Gukdu a sobering drinker. 2 robbers then take advantage of Min-hyuk and Gukdu's unconsciousness and search their pockets for money. When Bong-soon returns, she dispatches them by sending them flying. All of this is witnessed by Mr. Tak and a Gary, who were watching Bong-soon. Afterward, she takes the guys home and throws them on the couch, but is more careful with Gukdu. Meanwhile, Bong-soon's parents are watching Kyung-shim, and Mrs. Jinny wishes for her daughter to sleep cuddled with her boss tonight, unaware that Min-hyuk is sleeping with Gukdu. Meanwhile, the kidnapper roams the neighborhood looking for his new victim, despite Mr. Tak's men and the police protecting it. The next day, Mrs. Jinny brings Kyung-shim breakfast and wonders aloud if her daughter has achieved anything with Min-hyuk. But Kyung-shim burst her bubble by telling her that Gukdu is living with them, and she can't believe that Guy is as nosy as his mother. Meanwhile, Bong-soon prepares a super breakfast to relieve Min-hyuk and Gukdu's hangover and scolds them for dancing tango last night and almost kissing. Then, Bong-soon pretends to be unable to open a jar of jam, and Gukdu helps her as usual, which makes Min-hyuk laugh because she's good at faking it. Suddenly, Min-hyuk receives a call from his extortionist. He wants Min-hyuk to renounce his status as Mr. N's hair tomorrow. Before leaving, Gukdu advises Min-hyuk to seek help from the police, but he refuses because he doesn't trust them. Later, Mr. Gong looks worried and he says that the stock of his father's construction company plummeted because the press is reporting that he's gay. So Min-hyuk calls his friend from the news to dispel the rumors, just as he made Bong-soon's video disappear, and she thanks him for what he did. Elsewhere, Gukdu's investigation team tracks down one of the disposable cell phones used by the kidnapper. They arrive at an apartment and arrest a suspect. Then, the police interrogate the suspect who had the kidnapper's disposable phone. He says he found it and used it because he doesn't have money for a new one. His alibi is credible enough, so they let him go. Later, Min-hyuk tells Bong-soon that he got the address of the guy who sold the stolen motorcycle. She's ready to go find the suspect who's been tormenting her boss this whole time. But on the way, they run into a rude man who was yelling at a woman on the highway. So Bong-soon gets out to defend her, but the guy only drives away when Min-hyuk shows up. Angry about this, she hides in the guy's car and makes him drive to a quiet place, and when the man thinks she's going to kiss him, she gets out and makes the car spins at full speed, surprising Min-hyuk. Later, Min-hyuk takes Bong-soon to a quiet place and asks her about her super strength. She tells him the truth about the special powers that are inherited from generation to generation. He asks if, hypothetically, they were to get married and have a daughter, would she inherit those powers? Bong-soon says yes, although she's a little weirded out by the question. Min-hyuk finds this incredible and says he'll help her use her powers to become a hero. Elsewhere, Gukdu receives a visit from his girlfriend at the police station and thinks it's serious, but she only wanted to break up with him because she's in love with someone else, and that breaks Gukdu's heart. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk takes Bong-soon to the family dinner again, and his father orders him to get married soon because the rumors circulating about him are damaging the company. So he says he'll soon marry Bong-soon. And not only that, he surprises the entire family, including Bong-soon herself, by announcing that he plans to give their father 2 grandchildren. She tries to deny their relationship, but ends up accepting that they live together. On the way home, she lashes out at Min-hyuk, saying he's violating her labor rights, and he says it was the only thing he could think of to avoid an arranged marriage. The next day, Bong-soon is woken up by Min-hyuk's whistle. Starting today, she will train hard to learn how to handle her powers, but he is surprised when she shows him her true strength. That afternoon, Bong-soon is summoned to testify about the attack on her friend, and she tells Gukdu about the strange mask the kidnapper was wearing and the smell of fuel and asphalt coming off him. When she finishes her statement, Min-hyuk tells her that Heeji broke up with him, and she wisely says that broken hearts heal with time. He looks at her sadly, wondering why they're just friends, which Min-hyuk sees, and he feels jealous. At night, Mr. Tak's men patrol the neighborhood trying to escort pretty girls home to prevent further kidnappings, but the girls are easily scared of them, and an old woman interferes and easily defeats 3 gang members by herself. It turns out she's Bong-soon's grandmother and came to see what's happening in the neighborhood. That night, the kidnapper takes off his mask and goes to his usual pharmacy to buy sleeping pills, lying that he has insomnia. The pharmacist kindly warns him not to overuse them. Afterward, he returns to the basement where he's holding the girls and tells the ballerina he'll bring her a friend soon. Hours later, he follows the pharmacist to her house and kidnaps her. Meanwhile, someone sneaks into Min-hyuk's house. And it's not just 1, but 2, but fortunately, Bong-soon wakes up in time and takes care of the 2 guys before they hurt Min-hyuk. Then, they tie them up in the basement and lay them on a random quilt, unaware that the quilt has a love talisman on it. This was bought by Bong-soon's mother so her daughter would sleep on it with Min-hyuk. The next morning, one of the guy's cell phones rings and Min-hyuk answers. Mr. Tak tells his man to hold Min-hyuk until the family vote is over and asks him to bring Bong-soon to him. Then, Min-hyuk lets him know they failed, while Bong-soon goes to the basement and discovers the gang members hugging each other. Clearly, the love talisman worked. After that, Min-hyuk goes to the shareholders' meeting, where they were very angry that he didn't show up to be designated as his father's main heir. Then Min-hyuk tells the shareholders that he's been attacked and blackmailed for months. And not only that, last night 2 men broke into his house. So he calls Bong-soon so she can show the gang members tied up. When the video call ends, Min-hyuk says they should postpone the meeting until he catches the culprit, who's also been spreading ridiculous rumors like he likes men. Later, Min-hyuk speaks alone with his father and tells him that one of his brothers is to blame for hiring Mr. Tak. He used to work at his father's company years ago and is fond of Mr. An's older sons. Later, Mr. Tak goes to Anesoft and speaks with Min-hyuk. He tells him that his men only had to scare him. They were never going to seriously harm him, just following orders. Then he gives him a flash drive with the information he needs. Alone, Min-hyuk opens the files on the flash drive and listens to a call between his beloved brother, Dong-suk, and Mr. Tak. Just hearing the voice breaks Min-hyuk's heart, and he bursts into tears because he never thought Dong-suk didn't love him. Later, Bong-soon goes to Anesoft and finds her gloomy boss, and he tells her the truth about Dong-suk. She had never seen him so sad, so she decides to take him to her favorite amusement park. She comes here every time her mother kicks her out of the house for being lazy. Then, she takes him to her favorite restaurant and orders her favorite menu, making him smile. Elsewhere, the kidnapper clips his new victim's nails and tells her that she will be his third girlfriend and he will soon bring 4 more. Meanwhile, the pharmacist's mother goes to the police station and reports her daughter missing. Later, Bong-soon makes her boss take the bus, and he says the last time he took one was when he was going to the cemetery and the bus almost fell off a bridge, but a mysterious girl appeared and saved him. He always thought that the girl was an angel sent by his mother from heaven, and he stares at Bong-soon. Suddenly, Bong-soon's cell phone rings, interrupting the tender moment. It's her grandmother, who wants her to spend time with her. Then, Bong-soon tells her boss that she won't be sleeping at his house tonight, but will go see her grandmother. She asks him not to be sad, reminding him that he promised to give her a chance as a game developer, but he says she must first learn to control her strength. Later, they get off at Bong-soon's stop, and her grandmother greets Min-hyuk as her future son-in-law, causing awkwardness between them. When they are alone, the 3 women hold hands and look at the moon. Grandma solemnly says that power is passed down from generation to generation. She received it from her mother and passed it on to her daughter, Jinny. Then she had Bong-soon and passed on her power to her. Soon it will be Bong-soon's turn to pass it on to her future daughter, which makes Bong-soon reflect. When she was a teenager and was in love with Guk-do, she didn't want to have children because she saw her powers as a curse. However, since she met Min-hyuk, she sees her powers as a blessing, and having a daughter doesn't seem like a bad thing to her anymore. In the other hand, Min-hyuk goes to his family mansion and sadly remembers how his beloved brother Dong-suk played with him and protected him from everything. When Dong-suk arrives, he apologizes to Min-hyuk for what he did and swears he only wanted to scare him. His goal was never to hurt him. So Min-hyuk says he'll only forgive him this time because he was good to him as a child. The next day, Bong-soon wakes up early and on her way to Min-hyuk's personal gym, she runs into the youth gang who didn't show up for class. She scolds them, and they obey her by bowing to her, and this is seen by a friend of Mrs. Jinny. After that, she arrives at the gym and easily does the exercises Min-hyuk tells her to do and ends up breaking 2 punching bags. Then, they face each other in the ring. He asks her to get rid of him without using her strength while he hugs her from behind. Bong-soon gets nervous at his proximity, but she manages to get a lock on him and knock him to the floor. He quickly recovers and gets on top of her. They stare at each other, and he asks her not to tell anyone about her powers. Finally, they go to Min-hyuk's game room and play Go. To be promoted, Bong-soon must get a Go without knocking it off the board, and she succeeds on her 3rd try. Elsewhere, Mr. Tak goes to the hospital to visit his men. The ones Bong-soon beat up a while back are already being discharged, and Gwangbok promises revenge on Bong-soon. Afterward, Mr. Tak visits his men, who were beaten by Bong-soon's grandmother. Finally, he visits the men Bong-soon attacked at Min-hyuk's house. They are now dating and don't seem to pay attention anything. On the other side of town, Mrs. Jinny and her friends go to the temple to ask their favorite shaman for advice, and one of her friends tells Jinny that she saw Bong-soon being greeted by a gang member, and that angers her greatly. So when Bong-soon gets home, she harshly scolds her because she thinks her daughter is a gang member, and this breaks Bong-soon's heart. Her mother always scolds her without asking, and she bursts into tears, saying that even though her body is strong, her heart breaks like everyone else's, and she goes to her room in tears. Later, she goes downstairs to pack food for Bong-ki and Kyungshim, completely ignoring her mother. Upon arriving at the hospital, she sees Bong-ki and Heeji talking and asks them to stop seeing each other behind Gukdu's back because it's dishonest. You can't control who you fall in love with, but you can control who you don't hurt. Meanwhile, Gukdu and Nyukboy go to the theater because they discovered that one of the actors in the play, the man with the blue beard and his 7 brides, is wearing the same exclusive shoes as the kidnapper. When they interrogate him, he says his exclusive pair was stolen, and besides, he can't be the kidnapper because the plays are at night. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the kidnapper creates a distraction to draw the police away from Kyungshim's door and almost kidnaps her if it weren't for Bong-soon, who notices and begins chasing him. Unfortunately, he is very skilled at disguising himself, and she loses sight of him. Later, Gukdu arrives at the hospital and severely scolds Bong-soon because she chased the kidnapper and he could have hurt her. He wants to take her home right now, but she is so angry that she ignores him and leaves on her own. In the neighborhood, Min-hyuk goes to Bong-soon's father's bakery, and even though they're out of cakes, the man gives him walnut cookies and asks him to take care of Bong-soon, and he promises to do so, saying that he values her very much. Nearby, Gwangbok approaches Bong-soon, and before he can say or do anything, Gukdu throws him to the ground and begins to beat him savagely, and Bong-soon pushes him away to get him to leave the poor man alone. Gukdu takes Gwangbok into custody, even though he protests that he's the victim. All of this is witnessed by Min-hyuk, who teases Bong-soon about her constant troublesome life, and she vents her frustration on him. However, he doesn't get angry and tells her he'll always be on her side. So she insists that he let her be part of the game development team, and he promises to. Despite his promises, she doesn't believe him and walks sadly home. Her family asks her what happened, and she sadly says that everything is going wrong for her. She fell in love with the wrong person, she wasn't smart enough to get into college, she can't get the job she wants, and on top of that, she can't catch the kidnapper. Then her mom tries to cheer her up for the first time by saying she bought her favorite spicy chicken wings, which makes her smile. Meanwhile, Gukdu interrogates Gwangbok. The gang member tells him that he has nothing to do with the charges against him because he was hospitalized all this time because of Bong-soon. She broke 7 of his ribs, his jaw, and 4 teeth, and shows him his dentures. Even so, Gukdu is so angry that he locks Gwangbok up to spend at least 1 night in the cell. Afterward, he rubs his sore back, remembering that Bong-soon pushed him and doesn't understand why it hurts so much. The next day, Bong-soon goes to work and doesn't realize the kidnapper is watching her. When she arrives at her dollhouse office, she sees a new computer, and the wallpaper is Min-hyuk's face smiling at her. When he arrives, he says that the computer is hers, so she changes the wallpaper to her favorite actor. Later, he sees her looking sadly at the game development team and promises to let her join if she catches the kidnapper. But to do so, she must continue training with him. As the days pass, the local police work hard to find the kidnapper before the Special Investigations Unit takes the case away from them. Another hard worker is Bong-soon. She follows Min-hyuk's training to the letter because strength is useless if you don't know how to use it. One night, the youth gang was cleaning the neighborhood as Bong-soon instructed them to and ran into Mr. Tak's men, who were still patrolling the neighborhood. When they were seen throwing cigarette butts, the students scolded them, earning them a beating. One of them called Bong-soon, who came to their aid. Then, Bong-soon defeated Mr. Tak's men without even using her strength, but using the techniques Min-hyuk taught her. This news quickly reaches Mr. Tak, who can't believe Bong-soon is always beating up his men. The next day, Gukdu visits Heeji and apologizes for neglecting their relationship. He confesses that he always ends badly with his girlfriends because there's always been one girl in his heart. She will always come first for him, even before a girlfriend. On the other hand, Kyungshim is discharged and Bong-soon carefully takes her home, which surprises Kyungshim because Bong-soon was always unintentionally rude, and Bong-soon proudly says she's been training to control her strength. When they get home, Min-hyuk texts Bong-soon he'll pick her up because they have to have dinner with his family, and she doesn't understand why she has to go. When Min-hyuk arrives at Bong-soon's house, her mother forces him to stay and eat with them. He's unable to resist, and incredibly, he ends up having a good time, as if they were already family. Later, he takes her to dinner with his family, and Min-hyuk's dad asks her what she likes about his son. She sarcastically says that she likes his weirdness. He's super weird, and that makes Mr. An laugh. Afterward, Mr. An tells her that he was worried about his son because he used to have a lot of girlfriends, but then he stopped having them, and weird rumors started circulating, and that makes Bong-soon begins to seriously suspect that her boss doesn't like men. After that, Min-hyuk takes Bong-soon to the cemetery and introduces her to his mother. Later, he takes her to the river and tells her that the line from his mother's favorite movie goes like this: "No man wants to be just friends with a pretty girl." Bong-soon says that she's not pretty, and that's why they're friends, but that's not what Min-hyuk meant. He's honest with her and says Gukdu doesn't see her as a friend. He has feelings for her, and maybe he never told her because he didn't want to lose her. The only way for a relationship between friends who like each other to change is if one takes a step forward, and Min-hyuk takes that step and gets closer to Bong-soon. She understands what he means this time. She and Gukdu are only one step apart. Days later, the Special Investigations Unit takes the case from the local police, but team leader Yuk asks his detectives not to give up and continue searching for the kidnapper, unaware that they are being watched by secret cameras installed by the witness that saved the second attacked girl. On the other hand, Gukdu remembers that Bong-soon told him that the kidnapper smelled of asphalt and fuel, so he goes to the junkyard and questions the only worker, only to find that the owner isn't there. Meanwhile, Tax Gang is holding a meeting to discuss what to do with Bong-soon, and they conclude that the only way to defeat her is to attack them all together in an abandoned factory, so they hire voice impersonators. The next day, Bong-soon receives a call from her mother saying that she's being kidnapped, and a man tells her to wait for her at the abandoned factory in the neighborhood, and she's on her way. Then, her friend calls Mrs. Jinny, asking if she's been kidnapped, and she says no, so Kyungshim calls Gukdu and tells him what's happening, and he activates Bong-soon's tracker. Min-hyuk also finds out about this. He had gone to pick her up to go to work together, and he soon activates Bong-soon's tracker and is on his way. Meanwhile, Bong-soon arrives at the abandoned factory and realizes it's a trap by Mr. Tak's gang. The battle between Bong-soon and Mr. Tak's men begins, and as expected, Bong-soon defeats them one by one, remembering everything Min-hyuk taught her. At that moment, Min-hyuk arrives and sees Bong-soon wearing a pink hoodie, just like his mystery girls. She is the angel his mother sent for him. Gukdu also arrives and is shocked to see Bong-soon defeat all the gang members with a few punches. Suddenly, Gwangbok appears with a knife, and Min-hyuk and Gukdu rush to protect Bong-soon. However, it is Min-hyuk who arrives first and shields Bong-soon with his body, resulting in injury, while Gukdu beats Gwangbok to a pulp. Bong-soon bursts into tears at the sight of the wound and cries all the way to the hospital, shocking Gukdu. He didn't know she loved his boss so much. When Min-hyuk wakes up, he pretends to be in a lot of pain because Bong-soon wants to cuddle him and treats him very gently. When Mr. Gong arrives at the hospital crying, Min-hyuk sends Bong-soon out to eat, and she obeys. Alone, Min-hyuk confesses to Mr. Gong that he's fine. Elsewhere, Gukdu remembers his teenage years with Bong-soon and how she was always there for him. Now he's jealous of her relationship with her boss, so he goes to the hospital and asks Min-hyuk why he let himself get stabbed, and Min-hyuk says the answer is obvious and asks him to keep pretending he doesn't know about Bong-soon's powers. After that, Gukdu talks to Bonki and reveals that he already knows the truth about Bong-soon, and Bonki asks him to keep his sister's secret because many people at the hospital have been beaten by Bong-soon. Later, Bong-soon's family arrives at the hospital worried about what happened, and Mrs. Jinny is shocked when she learns that Min-hyuk was stabbed for defending her daughter. So she tells him that they as a family are very grateful to him and offers Bong-soon as a reward, which shocks everyone even more. Meanwhile, the kidnapped girls decide to work together and scream as loudly as they can so their screams reach the streets, but they didn't know that the kidnapper was watching them through hidden cameras, so he goes and savagely beats one of them. Elsewhere, Gukdu overhears the kidnapped pharmacist's mother say that her daughter was probably kidnapped by a neighbor, and he can't help thinking that the junkyard is the key to everything. Later, Bong-soon's mother decides to take revenge on Mr. Tak's gang, but when she is about to hit him, Min-hyuk's father arrives and beats him up for stabbing his son. After that, Mr. In goes to visit Min-hyuk, but he isn't happy with the visit because his family has never cared about him and ends up arguing with his father. Bong-soon overhears all of this and she feels sorry for her boss. At night, Gukdu goes to the junkyard and is shocked because the owner is Jang Hyun, the witness who saved the second attacked girl. This is a huge coincidence. Since he doesn't find anything, he returns to the police station and tells Detective Yuk about his suspicions. Meanwhile, Bong-soon sees her boss so sad that she reminds him that he promised never to be sad again because of his family. He says that his sadness will be cured by eating Mrs. Jinny's homemade food. So Bong-soon's mother starts cooking a feast for her future son-in-law. Then, Min-hyuk tells Bong-soon that he was on the bus she saved 8 years ago. She says that was the first time she used her powers. She always tried to suppress them. She looks at him so tenderly that he can't help but ask her not to look at anyone else like that, just him. Later, Bong-soon's parents arrive at the hospital with food for Min-hyuk, and before he can take a bite, Bonky stops him because he can't eat anything solid yet, so the four of them eat under Min-hyuk's eager gaze. After that, they leave, and Mr. Tak talks to Bong-soon. He declares his utter defeat, and she advises him to live a respectable life from now on. Elsewhere, the police receive a report of another missing girl, and the strangest thing is that the junkyard owner hasn't come out all night. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Min-hyuk asks Bong-soon to wash his hair, and she does, even though that's a girlfriend's job. When their faces are close, she closes her eyes, hoping for a kiss, but he asks her to go to sleep, and throughout the night, they stare at each other. The next day, Detective Buldum and Detective Neokboy stake out the junkyard and follow the owner, Jang Hyun, who only wants to make fools of them. He quickly loses them on the streets of Seoul and goes in search of his next victim, Gukdu's ex-girlfriend. Meanwhile, Gukdu goes to the hospital for Bong-soon, and she says that she already knows that he knows about her powers, and he says resignedly that they never seem to be on the same page. Then, he takes her to the police station and has her listen to Jang Hyun's testimony about how he supposedly witnessed the attack by one of the girls. Bong-soon, shocked, tells him that the voice is the same as the guy who tried to kidnap her friend. Suddenly, news arrives that the Special Investigations Unit has caught the serial kidnapper, but it's not Jang Hyun. Meanwhile, at the junkyard, Jang Hyun angrily watches the news. Someone impersonated him and took credit for his actions. Later, Bong-soon returns to the hospital, and Min-hyuk asks if she still likes Gukdu. She counters by asking why he's interested in it, and he confesses that he likes women, confirming Bong-soon's suspicions. The next day, Gukdu informs Detective Yuk that he will continue investigating the case on his own. Then he goes to the junkyard to interrogate Jang Hyun once more. His anger gets the better of him, and he begins to beat him up, accusing him of being the kidnapper. However, it's too late. His beating of Jang Hyun has already been recorded. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk knows that Bong-soon will try to catch the kidnapper on her own, so he decides to promote her to a game developer at Ainsoft to keep her busy. The news makes Bong-soon so happy that she calls her boss, and for the first time, speaks to him sweetly, making him blush. Meanwhile, the Special Investigations Unit scolds Detective Yuk's team for Gukdu's actions, and he decides to resign because he knows Jang Hyun is the culprit and won't let him remain free. That night, he goes to the junkyard again, but before he makes another mistake, he is stopped by Bulgum and Neokboy, who tell him to come to his senses and return to work tomorrow. Meanwhile, Jinny offers to take care of her future son-in-law in the hospital, and instead of bringing him bland food, she brings him spicy chicken wings, Bong-soon's favorite food. Later, she runs into Mr. Tak, and he apologizes for the incident and shows her all his men with bones broken by Bong-soon. Jinny wonders if she can do anything for them. The next day, Bong-soon wakes up frustrated because she was dreaming that she was Juliet and Min-hyuk was Romeo, and they were about to kiss, but she woke up. She quickly forgets the dream and goes to the company. She is greeted by Mr. Gong, who welcomes her as a permanent employee. Then Min-hyuk then gives her a designer handbag and her employee ID, making her very happy. But that happiness ends quickly when she realizes her office is in the same old office and she won't be on any planning and development team like the others. Instead, Min-hyuk will be her team leader and Mr. Gong will be the secretary. Basically, nothing has changed. Suddenly, someone who looks very similar to Gwangbok walks in, but he's a pretty and delicate man, and, according to Mr. Gong, His name is Dolbyung. Alone, Dolbyung scares Bong-soon by telling her that rumor has it she's very important to the boss and Dolbyung won't let her take advantage of Min-hyuk. After all, without his permission, she'll never be part of the game development teams. Before leaving, Bong-soon asks if he doesn't have a twin brother named Gwangbok, but that's not the case. After that, Dolbyung gives her a pile of rejected game reports and tells Bong-soon to make a comparative report on why they failed. Then he takes her to the break room where Dolbyung orders her to make him some coffee. In the office, Mr. Gong asks Min-hyuk if they should rescue her from Dolbyung's clutches. After all, he has a reputation for scaring away new interns, but Min-hyuk says he wants to know who's scaring whom. In the break room, Bong-soon takes revenge for Dolbyung's mistreatment and locks him between the table and the window using her super strength. After that, Bong-soon tells Min-hyuk what she did to Dolbyung, and he goes to rescue him, laughing because he believes Dolbyung won't be able to scare a new employee this time. Later, Mr. Gong comforts Dolbyung by saying that he understands his pain and embarrassment. He was attacked by Bong-soon too. Meanwhile, Bong-soon's mother goes to the hospital and gives Mr. Tak a bottle of Feces wine, saying that it will help heal his wounds. He drinks it without realizing what it is, and then tries to throw it up when Mrs. Jinny tells him the truth. At night, Bong-soon takes Min-hyuk home and asks her to stay with him, and she lets him lie on her lap. When he falls asleep, she can't help but look at the painting he's hiding in the closet and realizes it's her wearing the pink hoodie, and that makes her heart race. Meanwhile, Detective Yuk takes Gukdu out for a drink and gives him back his badge, telling him they'll continue investigating the case, but they'll do so discreetly. When Bong-soon arrives home, her grandmother and mother tell her it's time for her to start writing her story as the strong woman to Bong-soon and give her the family diaries that have been passed down through generations. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk wakes up alone at home. Unable to go back to sleep, he goes to Bong-soon's house. He asks to speak to her alone and takes her hand and places it on his chest and says his heart hurts and asks her to stop liking Gukdu. Then Min-hyuk tells her he likes her, and she asks for time to sort out her feelings. Then she goes into the house, where her mother is waiting for her with a bunch of questions about him. She wants to know his birthday, but Bong-soon can't stop thinking about what he told her and ignores her. That night, she dreams of Min-hyuk and Gukdu as her two Romeos, and suddenly, she receives two messages from them simultaneously. They both want to watch a movie with her tomorrow. The next day, Bong-soon goes to the company and Dolbyung gets revenge on her by ordering her to bring 10 boxes of paper from the warehouse. To her utter horror, Bong-soon easily carries them and then whispers that she's an alien. After that, Bong-soon texts Min-hyuk and Gukdu saying she's busy today and can't go to the movies. She starts working on the report Dolbyung asked her for and gets angry when she reads how they rejected really good video games and wonders if they'll ever reject hers. Meanwhile, Gukdu goes to a jewelry store and buys Bong-soon a necklace and calls her to see her, but Bong-soon says she'll be working late, and he asks her not to spend more time with her boss than necessary because she's no longer her bodyguard. She now has to keep a normal schedule. Meanwhile, the kidnapper is following Heeji's steps and listening to her calls thanks to the microphone he installed in her bag. Detective Yuk is also following the kidnapper's steps, but he notices this and lets him know that he knows he's watching him. Later, Min-hyuk finally arrives at the company and Bong-soon feels like she's seeing the sun because of the way he shines, and he's not shy about his feelings at all. So he takes her hand in front of the employees and leads her to the office. He asks her what she's been working on, and she shows him her video game character based on her. He says she should start attending the game planning and development meetings to improve. Later, they go to eat at the company cafeteria with Mr. Gong and Dolbyung, and the hysterical man accuses Bong-soon of being an alien. Min-hyuk just laughs and flirts with Bong-soon, making her blush. Later, Gukdu calls Bong-soon to tell her he wants to have coffee with her at the company lunch counter, but when he's about to arrive, he receives a call from Detective Yuk telling him that the kidnapper Jang Hyun has been following Heeji all day. So Gukdu tries to call her, but she doesn't answer. So he tracks her phone and drives quickly there, and he is surprised when he sees her on a date with Bongki and asks her to be careful. Meanwhile, Bong-soon waits a long time for Gukdu, but he doesn't show up. It's like it's always been for them. She just waits for him, and he never shows up. Suddenly, Min-hyuk appears and says she has the face of a girl who's been dumped, and she doesn't deny it. He asks her to give him a chance, and she confesses with teary eyes that she doesn't want to endanger him by being by his side. He says that doesn't matter to him and hugs her tightly. This time, Bong-soon surrenders to his embrace. Later, Gukdu arrives at the company, but it's too late. Min-hyuk has already taken Bong-soon home, and she decides not to answer his calls. When they arrive home, they say goodbye cutely and are seen by Kyung-shim, who wants to know everything. Later, Gukdu calls Kyung-shim asking about Bong-soon, and she tells him she's already home. Gukdu goes to her house and asks to talk to her, and tells her that he doesn't want to be her friend anymore, but rather something more. Bong-soon interrupts him, saying that she doesn't want to lose a special friend, and he realizes he is being rejected and decides not to give her the necklace. Alone, Gukdu reminisces about his entire friendship with Bong-soon and can't believe he never realized he was in love with her until he lost her, mourning something that can never be. Before going to sleep, Kyung-shim tells Bong-soon that she'll return to Busan tomorrow. The next day, Heeji goes to the police station and Gukdu shows her photos of Jang-hyun, the kidnapper, and informs her that she will be protected by a police officer. All of this is seen on the surveillance cameras that Jang-hyun himself hid. Meanwhile, at the company, Bong-soon and Min-hyuk work hard on the video game project she's developing. It's about a strong girl who will rescue a prince using a big sledgehammer. Although they're focused, they can't stop looking at each other tenderly all day long. To her chagrin, he takes her hand, and when she complains, he hugs her. Meanwhile, Bong-soon's adoring youth gang learns that some gang members attacked Bong-soon and go to the hospital to seek revenge by looking for the leader. However, Mr. Tak decides to leave the mafia world because he feels like a renewed man after drinking Feast's wine. At night, Jang-hyun sneaks away from the police, and the police watch Heeji like hawks. But it's not her he wants, but someone else. Elsewhere in the city, Jang-hyun kidnaps Kyung-shim and takes her to the basement of the junkyard, leaving her purse and suitcase on the street, which are picked up by a homeless man. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk takes Bong-soon home, and she texts her friend, unaware that it's Jang-hyun who's responding. He then strikes up a small conversation, and Bong-soon reveals that she's always been afraid of hurting an innocent person because, according to her family's diaries, that's how their powers are lost, which surprises the kidnapper. Meanwhile, at the police station, the detectives finally realize they've been watched this whole time and find the camera Jang-hyun installed, which amuse him. On the other hand, Bong-soon and Min-hyuk are in their own world, sending each other cute videos before going to sleep. The next day, Min-hyuk shows Bong-soon the redesign of the video game character she's creating, and she's fascinated by it. Meanwhile, Detective Yuk is informed that the Special Investigations Unit will close the kidnapper case and tries to prevent it, but his superior scolds him, saying that if he does, he won't be promoted. Meanwhile, Mr. Tak decides to become a Buddhist and follow the path of righteousness, and his men go in search of him. The gang too, because they still seek revenge in Bong-soon's name. When they're about to fight, a monk scolds them and purifies them, removing their bad qualities. Later, Bong-soon finishes her game presentation and goes looking for Min-hyuk. When she finds him, he leads them to an empty room and encases her in his arms. He asks if she's sorted out her feelings and if she has an answer for him. She says yes, smiling at him with her heart in her eyes. Then he says there's no need to answer him because her eyes have already done it for her and kisses her tenderly on the forehead. After that, Min-hyuk takes her to his house by the sea with the excuse of renewing their minds and coming up with new project ideas, but in reality, he just wants to spend time with them away from everyone. When they arrive, Bong-soon thinks they're going to work and starts sketching, but he convinces her to go out and play in the sea. On the beach, Min-hyuk draws half a heart and asks her if she wants to be with him. She draws the other half of the heart and approaches him, which makes him so happy that he can't help but kiss her. At night, Min-hyuk takes her home, and he stares at her and thanks her for appearing in his life before she enters the house. Inside, Bonki tells Bong-soon that he's craving some Busan fish and asks her to tell Kyung-shim to bring some when she comes back to visit. Bong-soon texts Kyung-shim, and the kidnapper replies for her, unaware that Kyung-shim greets her friend in a special way when she is in Busan. Frightened, Bong-soon calls Gukdu and asks him to track Kyung-shim's tracking device, and it leads them to a homeless man living at the train station who tells them he found the abandoned suitcase the same day the police thought the kidnapper would attack Heeji. Mr. Yuk then decides to search the junkyard without police order and disobeys his superiors, along with his entire team. Meanwhile, Bong-soon decides to go to the junkyard on her own and runs into Gukdu, but they both can't find Kyung-shim, and he asks her to come home because he doesn't want her to get hurt. Then, she returns home, distraught, and receives a message from the kidnapper. kidnapper. It's a horrific video of him hitting Kyungshim, challenging Bong-soon to find him, and advising her to work alone or her friend will pay. Bong-soon bursts into desperate tears and runs to the only person who can help her, Min-hyuk. She desperately asks him to find Jang-hyun, and he says he will, but makes her promise not to do anything risky alone and puts a tracking necklace on her. The next day, Min-hyuk continues to triangulate the junkyard digitally to find out if there's a hidden basement, but this takes time. Meanwhile, Bong-soon wakes up, distressed, and re-watches the video the kidnapper sent her of Kyungshim and hears her being beaten at the end, which breaks her heart. She goes to the junkyard and begins aggressively searching for her everywhere, moving cars randomly. Suddenly, she sees a secret entrance to a basement and enters, unaware that she's being watched by the kidnapper, so he rushes and gets Kyungshim out of there. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk's special investigation program finishes analyzing the junkyard and shows him the secret basement, so he calls Bong-soon. When she doesn't answer, he tracks her necklace and discovers that she's already in the basement. In the basement, Bong-soon finds the kidnapped girls and rips off the doors one by one, freeing them, and they tell her that Jang-hyun took Kyungshim. Outside, Jang-hyun orders his employee to set fire to the junkyard, but he's not very clever and only manages to burn part of it, allowing Bong-soon to get the girls out. At that moment, Guk-do sees the fire in the distance and calls his detective squad, who quickly arrive and begin searching the basement, finding a room where the kidnapper had kept several photos of Bong-soon. While the police are busy searching the place, Bong-soon escapes and gets into Min-hyuk's car. Min-hyuk had just arrived on the scene, and he was very worried and angry with Bong-soon because she went alone instead of waiting for him. The next day, Bong-soon and Min-hyuk return to the company to pretend everything is fine, but nothing is. Bong-soon decides to tell Guk-do about the video the kidnapper sent, and he says he'll conduct a thorough investigation with Detective Yuk. Then, Min-hyuk sees them together and complains to Bong-soon for going to the junkyard alone yesterday. She reminds him that he trained her to use her powers, but Min-hyuk didn't know that he would love her as much as he does now. Every time she puts herself in danger, he suffers. Bong-soon then decides to end the relationship because Min-hyuk deserves to go out with a normal girl, not a monster like her. On the other hand, Mrs. Jinhee accidentally finds her husband helping Mrs. Jung, Guk-do's mother, at a charity event. She accuses them of adultery and begins beating her husband, who is defended by Mrs. Jung. After that, Jinhee complains to her friends about how difficult it is to have a handsome husband, especially because Mrs. Jung is always flirting with him. Her friends tell her she's mad. Her husband isn't handsome, and Mrs. Jung wasn't flirting with him. Later, Min-hyuk is so angry that he takes it out on Secretary Gong. Then, when he finds out that Bong-soon hasn't eaten all day, he tries to force her to do it, but she doesn't want to. This upsets him even more because she doesn't let him take care of her in that regard, so he orders spicy chicken wings for her, hoping she'll eat them. Meanwhile, the police interrogate the kidnapped girls, and one of them tells them that every time he entered, she heard an organ playing. Meanwhile, Mr. Tak decides to leave his life at the monastery because he is informed that the Bong-soon neighborhood urbanization has been granted to his construction company. Later, Jang-hyun calls Bong-soon, asking if she will marry him if he asks her, and she says yes. He tells her he will send her the location where they will meet and promises to return her friend. Distraught, Bong-soon writes a farewell note to Min-hyuk and leaves, but not before sadly looking at the chicken wings he bought for her. That night, Bong-soon receives the address where the kidnapper will be waiting for her, and it is a construction site, so she goes without hesitation. Fortunately, Min-hyuk was so worried about her that he was tracking her necklace and immediately found out she was going somewhere and called Guk-do to come too. When Bong-soon arrived, she saw Kyungshim under a construction hoist, which would fall on her in seconds. Then Bong-soon ran desperately and stopped the construction hoist, sending it flying, not realizing someone else was there. As she approached the man, she realized she had hurt an innocent man. Suddenly, the diary she had been given as the bearer of the sacred power burned, and Bong-soon's powers disappeared because she had broken rule number 1, never harm an innocent person. Fortunately, Min-hyuk and Guk-do arrived in time before the kidnapper attacked her. As the kidnapper tried to escape, Bong-soon fainted in Min-hyuk's arms. Guk-do chases the kidnapper in his car, but Jang-hyun loses control and falls into a lake, and when the police arrive, they are unable to find his body. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk calls Bong-soon's father and tells him that Bong-soon will be sleeping at his house because she went through a stressful time. Relieved that his daughter is with a good man, he tells Bonki that he is grateful that Min-hyuk is caring for his daughter's wounded heart. Bonki says that he became a doctor because he wanted to help his sister get rid of her power because he knew she wanted to live a normal life, but perhaps she will be happy now because she is with Min-hyuk. Later, when Bong-soon wakes up, she finds Min-hyuk sleeping next to her. The two stare into each other's eyes and she tells him she is in love with him, and he tells her he loves her, hugging her. The next day, Min-hyuk wakes up alone and runs to find Bong-soon. She's in the kitchen trying to mash an apple to make juice, but she can't do it anymore because her powers are gone. So Min-hyuk shows her how to use a juicer to stop her from feeling sad. Meanwhile, Gukdu writes the police report on the kidnapper, leaving Bong-soon's involvement out of it. Later, Hyungshin goes to the Do family's house, where everyone cries with her about what happened because they love her as if she were part of the family. Afterward, Min-hyuk takes Bong-soon home, and she desperately runs in to hug her friend and tearfully tells her that she lost her power. She always wanted that, but now she feels sad. At lunch, Bong-soon's mother scolds her daughter as usual for letting Kyungshin be hurt so much, and she confesses that she's lost her powers. When Kyungshin is escorted to Busan, Bong-soon's mother decides to open her heart to her daughter. She takes her hands and tells her she knows how she feels. When she lost her powers, she felt empty and useless, but she didn't let those feelings destroy her. She started lifting weights from scratch and advises her daughter to start life from scratch and that she will take care of her as she always should, and confesses that she took better care of Bonki because the sons of the family are born weak because the daughters take all their power. But from now on, she will be her baby again. Days later, Bong-soon begins her life as an ordinary girl and tries not to let the sadness overcome her, so she focuses on work, pretending that everything is fine. But that doesn't last long because Dolbyeon wants to show everyone how weird Bong-soon is and asks her to carry 10 boxes of paper from one office to the other, and she can't do it, so Mr. Gong scolds Dolbyeon for mistreating the new employees. Then Min-hyuk takes Bong-soon to the company rooftop and asks if she's really okay, and she's sincere, she's not okay, and he tries to comfort her by saying that he loves her with or without powers. Since she's an ordinary person now, he'll take care of her and open the jam jars for her, making her smile for real. In the afternoon, Bong-soon's parents argue again because of Gukdu's mother. Meanwhile, at night, Bong-soon and Min-hyuk had their first date as ordinary people, going to buy chocolates and eating them while kissing and laughing, enjoying their love. Quite the opposite of Bong-soon's parents, who argue at home because of Mrs. Jinny's jealousy. They are so busy arguing that they end up pushing Bong-soon away when she comes home. Meanwhile, at the police station, they close the serial kidnapping case because they haven't found the body. For them, Jang Hyun drowned and was eaten by vermin. The next day, Bong-soon and Min-hyuk go on a picnic in the park where they have a good time reading comics and eating the lunchboxes she packed for him. What no one suspects is that Jang Hyun has been hiding all this time. He was searching information Min-hyuk because he knows it's the fastest way to reach Bong-soon. The following week, Jang Hyun disguises himself as a journalist and goes to Ainsoft and tries to arrange a meeting with Min-hyuk, but is quickly discovered by Gukdu, who had come to visit Bong-soon. Jang Hyun manages to escape through the elevators, and Gukdu quickly calls Min-hyuk, telling him to order the doors to the entire building to be closed, which he does. Then, Jang Hyun goes up to the announcement room and speaks through the PA system, threatening to blow up the place in 15 minutes if he isn't let out. So Min-hyuk makes sure to leave Bong-soon safely with Mr. Bong before going in search of Jang Hyun. When all the workers are evacuated, Jang Hyun hides in the crowd and reaches the office where Mr. Gong was protecting Bong-soon. He quickly knocks them out, taking her to the roof, where he chains her with a bomb that will explode in a few minutes. Meanwhile, Min-hyuk shuts down all the power in the building to make it difficult for him to escape, but quickly learns that Bong-soon has been taken. So he tracks her necklace and sees that she is on the roof. When he reaches the top floor, he tries to open the rooftop doors, but they have too many chains, and Bong-soon yells at him from outside telling to leave. She will soon explode, but Min-hyuk says he will not abandon her and will spend their last moments together because he loves her. Desperate, Bong-soon begins to call on her powers to come back and help her save Min-hyuk, and as if her powers hurt her, it comes back to her, and she manages to get the bomb out and throw it into the sky before it explodes. She also opens the door to the rooftop, and Min-hyuk hugs her, relieved that she is okay. Fortunately, it wasn't a bomb, but a box of fireworks, which exploded in the sky, and the employees cheered as if it were a fireworks show. After that, Min-hyuk took Bong-soon out to eat to calm them down, and she suggested going to his house because she had never been so happy in her life, and Min-hyuk could barely contain his excitement about spending the night with her. However, Bong-soon's father called him and asked him to take his daughter home, and he complied because he didn't want to break his trust. Later, Min-hyuk and Bong-soon went to sleep, and they couldn't stop thinking about each other. They longed to be in each other's arms, so Bong-soon ran to his house in the middle of the night, and he greeted her with a kiss, happy to have her by his side. The next day, Bong-soon and Min-hyuk go to the company together, and they are so cute cuddling together that Mr. Gong scolds them for being affectionate in public. Then Bong-soon goes to the roof where she and Min-hyuk nearly exploded and vows to find Jang-hyun, while Min-hyuk decides to put the kidnapper's picture in all his games so more people will see his face and the police will find him faster. Meanwhile, Gukdu goes to Ainsok to interrogate Bong-soon and is shocked when she tells him that last night Min-hyuk decided to stay with her despite knowing she would explode. He then hugs her saying goodbye, and this is seen by Mr. Gong, who runs to tell Min-hyuk. Elsewhere, meanwhile, Mrs. Jinhee goes to the bakery, and the employee tells her that Mr. Do didn't come to work and left a note in his place saying he ran away and doesn't want anyone looking for him. In fact, he's gone to live in the woods. Later, Min-hyuk calls Gukdu to talk to him seriously about Bong-soon tonight. He then scolds Bong-soon for hugging another man, but she's so sweet and affectionate with him that he forgets what he was going to say and concludes that he also hugs employees. It's practically the same thing. That night, Min-hyuk and Gukdu meet at a bar, but instead of talking, they start fighting and Bong-soon comes to scold them. She wanted to talk about the kidnapper, but testosterone floods the place and lets them drink themselves into unconsciousness. Then, she takes them to Min-hyuk's house, and this time, she carelessly throws Gukdu onto the couch and, with great care and love, places Min-hyuk on his bed and takes off his shoes. The next day, Min-hyuk lies down on his bed and realizes that now the tables have turned and Bong-soon only takes care of him. Later, Bong-soon arrives and says she wants to talk to them seriously. She wants to catch Jang-hyun, and she'll do it alone if they don't cooperate and they behave this time. According to Gukdu, when criminals are cornered, they try to leave the country, so that gives Min-hyuk the idea to call Mr. Tak for help, and Mr. Tak says he'll deploy all his men around the city looking for Jang-hyun and will consult with all the people who sells fake documents to flee to China. Then Bong-soon calls her beloved youth gang members to ask them to post photos of the kidnapper on their social media, since teenagers are the ones who use them the most. Meanwhile, Jang-hyun is going crazy with rage because his face went viral and he can no longer go out in the daylight without some people looking at him suspiciously. So he decides to put an end to the cause of it all and buys a rifle from a small-time pawn shop, unaware that the owner is a friend of Mr. Tak. Later, Mr. Tak calls Min-hyuk and tells him about the rifle, so Gukdu advises Bong-soon that when he calls her, she should attack his male pride to force him to reveal himself. At night, Min-hyuk drives Bong-soon home and stops by the bakery to greet his future mother-in-law, who's arguing with a customer because the quality of the products has dropped since Mr. Do ran away. Min-hyuk then promises to find Mr. Do and bring him home, but according to Jinhee, her husband just needs space. Then she enthusiastically asks him about his date, time, and place of birth, and he realizes she wants to find out how much chemistry there is between him and Bong-soon, so he asks her to find out. If the shaman says they have bad chemistry, he asks her to find another shaman until he tells her they're a perfect match, earning a squeal of excitement from Mrs. Jinhee and her friends. The next day, Bong-soon goes to work and receives a call from Jang-hyun. She goads him, saying that he's afraid of a petite girl like her and challenges him to meet her at the construction site tonight, and he falls into her trap and agrees to go. That night, Bong-soon arrives at the construction site, along with Jang-hyun and his rifle. He quickly shoots Bong-soon, revealing his location. Then Gukdu chases him while Min-hyuk monitors him with his drone and tells Gukdu through his earpiece how to follow him. Together, they manage to guide him to some containers. Suddenly, Bong-soon appears and traps him in the containers, attacking him with nuts. It turns out that she was wearing a bulletproof vest beforehand and wasn't hurt. Then Bong-soon then cages him, and when the police arrive, the three of them leave the place so that the police can finally arrest Jang-hyun. Days later, the news announces that the kidnapper has finally been arrested, and everyone can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Bong-soon returns to work on her video game project, which she has to present soon. Min Hyuk is delighted when she explains that the protagonist saves Prince Min Min and they live happily ever after. When Mr. Gong asks if the main couple will have children, Min Hyuk blushes excited for the future, and Bong Soon says that maybe that will happen in the second season. Meanwhile, Mrs. Jinny continues to work the bakery without her husband, and her friends try to convince her that it's best to apologize for hitting him, and she gets offended, saying that she hasn't hit anyone since she was 19. Her husband always has bruises because he's clumsy. Meanwhile, in the forest, Min Hyuk brings several bottles of soju to his future father-in-law and tries to convince him to come home because he wants to marry Bong Soon as soon as possible, and he won't be able to if Mr. Do continues living in the forest. Then Mr. Do asks if he'll take care of his daughter, and Min Hyuk says yes, and Mr. Do tells him that his daughter is strong, but her heart is made of glass and she hurts easily, so he asks him to never make her cry. Obviously, Min Hyuk says he'll make her happy because he loves her so much that he feels alive when he's with her. This convinces Mr. Do that Min Hyuk is the right man for his daughter, and he toasts for them. Elsewhere, Bonki and Heeji meet for the last time because she's moving to Vienna after receiving a job offer, and she accepted. Bonki says that they weren't meant to be together after all, and that's okay because they'll surely find their other half soon. At night, Min Hyuk takes Mr. Do home. The man is completely drunk, but Mrs. Jinny isn't bothered by this because she wants Min Hyuk to spend the night in her daughter's room and finally seal the marriage deal. Then Min Hyuk and Bong Soon go to her room but are interrupted by Bonki. So Min Hyuk decides it's best to go to his house, even though he doesn't want to sleep alone. Before leaving, he kisses her several times, promising to visit her in her dreams. Weeks later, Jang Hyun is sentenced to life in prison, while his victims are still reeling from the trauma they experienced. Days later, the local police name Min Hyuk a brave citizen because Gukdu wrote in his police report that they caught the kidnapper thanks to him, omitting Bong Soon's name. Bong Soon advises her boyfriend to get used to it because he will always be rewarded in her name every time she does something good. After that, Bong Soon and Min Hyuk attend the presentation of Bong Soon's video game, Strong Woman Do Bong Soon, to the executives, and everyone likes the premise of a super strong, petite girl who uses nuts to defeat villains and rescue the prince. That night, Gukdu visits Bong Soon and confesses that when they were in high school, he spread a rumor that he liked petite, cute girls because he wanted her to realize he liked her, but she never noticed, and the two conclude that they were always disconnected from each other. It's as if life had decided they'd be better off as friends forever. Days later, Dolbyung announces that Bong Soon's video game has been accepted by the management, and from now on, she will be promoted to the main game planning and development team and congratulates Bong Soon. Later, the youth gang, who adores Bong Soon, goes to talk to Min Hyuk. They want to make sure he doesn't hurt Bong Soon. To them, she's their mentor, which amuses Min Hyuk, and he buys them lunch. After all, they're just students. After that, Gukdu goes to talk to Min Hyuk and threatens to beat him up if he ever hurts Bong Soon and promises to always watch him. Min Hyuk isn't intimidated and promises that he will always make Bong Soon happy. Weeks later, the Strong Woman Do Bong Soon game is released, and just as Bong Soon always dreamed, she finally has a video game character based on her. As the days go by, Min Hyuk fits in perfectly with the Do family and they spend picnics with Kyungshim. They are practically a family now. Meanwhile, Bong Soon decides to be the hero she always wanted to be and helps everyone she can, such as helping elderly people or catching thieves, but always hiding her identity, which drives Dolbyung crazy because she's always late. Then, tired of her lateness, Dolbyung fires Bong Soon from the team, and she returns to being an intern under Min Hyuk's wing. This isn't bad at all because they love being together. The only one who complains is Mr. Gong, who is subject to seeing their affections publicly displayed all the time. That night, while Bong Soon is writing in her family diary about her actions as a hero, her father enters her room and tells her that he likes Min Hyuk and knows he loves her. Days later, Min Hyuk and Bong Soon go for a walk under the cherry blossom rain, and he confesses that he fell in love with her at first sight and waited for her because he knew they were destined to be together forever. Surprisingly, he takes out a ring and asks her to marry him, and Bong Soon accepts with a kiss. Sometime later, Min Hyuk and Bong Soon's wedding is celebrated, and everyone is so happy for them that even Gukdu comes and warns Min Hyuk that he will continue to watch over him. Mr. Tak and his men, who are now family friends, also attend. 9 months later, Mrs. Jinny goes to pray to Buddha and fervently asks him to make her daughter to give birth a boy because she doesn't think her son-in-law could handle a strong baby girl. But Buddha doesn't listen to her prayers as Bong-soon gives birth to twin girls. 3 months later, Min-hyuk can't handle the work of caring for his daughters anymore and decides to call in professional nannies trained in martial arts. In other words, Mr. Tak's gang members. But the twins are so strong that they get rid of them in a single day. Then Min-hyuk tries to comfort them, but they beat him up. Desperate, he calls his wife and tells her the twins got rid of the new nannies, and she says she'll be home soon. It turns out Bong-soon takes her job as a hero to heart, as there will always be someone who needs a hero.